Coming up next, Chowder on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Talking Tom Heroes on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, The Fungies on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Talking Tom and Friends on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Grizzy and the Lemmings on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, The Tom and Jerry Show on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, We Bear Bears on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Mr. Bean on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Ninjago on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Teen Titans Go on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, The Amazing World of Gumball on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Scooby-Doo and Guess Who on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Ben 10 Classics on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Becamato on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Looney Tunes Cartoons on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, new Looney Tunes cartoons on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Tom and Jerry in New York on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, new Tom and Jerry in New York on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, new Jellystone on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Jellystone on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, We Baby Bears on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Batman the Brave and the Bold on Cartoon Network. Next, DC Superhero Girls on Cartoon Network.